We are learning tonight about a dangerous illness hitting children who have been exposed to the coronavirus. None have died, but many require critical care. Dr. James Schneider currently has 9 kids in his ICU at the Cohen Children's Medical Center out on Long Island, just outside New York City. Dr. Schneider, I appreciate you being with us. What can you tell us about these children and what is a very scary story to hear?
Well, good evening, and thanks for having me. So what I could tell you is that we're identifying just a new syndrome that, frankly, coronavirus is being associated with. And it's a syndrome that is, although rare, it is something that is definitely life-threatening for these children. It seems to be a reaction to a previous infection with coronavirus, meaning the patients are not necessarily contagious at this time. However, they're presenting with signs that look like something we're familiar with called Kawasaki disease, but also have other symptoms that really are showing evidence of their cardiovascular systems being affected, and they're needing blood pressure medicines for support. Some need mechanical ventilation for support, and it's just something that we need to get everyone aware that this exists. It's also important to understand that it's not a very common thing. Most kids who get a coronavirus infection, thankfully, are either not even symptomatic or don't even require hospitalization. However, this is a newly recognized syndrome, which is really maybe even 2 weeks old. We're barely just learning about it.
What kind of age ranges are we talking about here when we mention these kids?
It's ages in the toddler range, really, through teens. It's a similar type of age range we would expect to see with Kawasaki disease, however, maybe a little bit older. But it's really covers most of the age range of pediatrics, frankly.
We said no deaths, and I'm hoping that still is the case.
That I'm aware of. I know in our institution we've had no deaths. I think, from my understanding, there have been no reported deaths from this illness.
What about longer-term issues as a result of the illness itself?
Sure, and the reason to, I think, bring this information to light is that we know with Kawasaki disease, one of the main risks of having the illness is that the coronary arteries, or the arteries of the heart, could be affected by the illness, which could lead to long-term complications for the child's heart. And therefore, it's important for us as a community to be aware of this illness so that children can be evaluated by a pediatric cardiologist, by their pediatricians, just to ensure that there is no long-term complication.
I want to make sure we don't gloss over this fact and people fully understand what we're talking about here. Not every child has tested positive now for the virus, but every child who has this condition has tested positive for antibodies. So every one of them has had at some point coronavirus.
Well, as far as we know, there is a very, very strong suspicion that there is a link between this condition and coronavirus. We're just the testing is only getting catching up to speed right now. So there have been patients who may have presented with this that we are just unsure of their coronavirus exposure. However, right now it seems that most patients have had a previous exposure to coronavirus, meaning they have antibodies present. However, when we test in their nose, when we do the PCR test, we don't find a current coronavirus infection, which is why it's important to understand this, because that means these children are not actually contagious when they present this sick to us.
You seeing new patients every single day?
We are, but if you just to put it into context, we've only been seeing this illness for probably a week and a half to 2 weeks, even worldwide. So it's so early in the awareness of this illness, of the presentation of this illness, that naturally I would expect that we'll see this on a daily basis across the world, frankly.
Yeah, Dr. Schneider, we appreciate you being here. We wish you well, all the great work that you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's Dr. James Schneider. Let's go back to Dr. Gottlieb once more. What do you make of this phenomenon, Dr. Gottlieb? It's quite scary to hear about it.
Well, it looks like a post-viral syndrome, and there's a lot of viruses that create post-viral syndromes. I think the question is how many kids are getting infected with coronavirus and just having subclinical or such mild illness that they're not really getting recognized. I suspect a lot. We don't really have good data on that, and the NIH is undertaking a study right now to try to get a sense of what the prevalence is of infection among children. But if you believe that a lot of kids have been exposed to coronavirus, probably got infected, had subclinical illness, no symptoms or very mild symptoms, and you see a small number of them having a post-viral syndrome of this nature, that might be consistent with other viruses. There's other viruses that cause post-viral syndromes and cause this constellation of sort of inflammatory types of symptoms. What we don't know is how many kids actually have had coronavirus and how common this is. But the more we learn about this virus, the more we recognize that there's a lot of unusual features of it. It seems to be activating platelets and causing blood clotting problems in certain patients. It's causing autoimmune type phenomena, inflammatory conditions in certain patients. And so, it's a nasty pathogen, and it's a pathogen that we don't fully understand yet.
Just underscores, as you say, how much we don't know about this virus, how it affects different groups, the way it may change. How are we thinking about that as more stories come out over the past 24 hours or so about this virus itself, the way it may be mutating, and whether that's playing in a role of any of our conversation this evening?
Yeah, just because the virus is mutating, the virus is going to change, so it's going to mutate. Just because it's mutating doesn't mean it's changing in ways that's going to affect how dangerous it is or how infectious it is. And none of the data in recent days really demonstrates that. All it shows is that aspects of the virus is changing, which is what we would expect the virus to do. But we don't yet have any reason to believe that it's changing in ways that would make it more or less dangerous or more or less infectious. I think what we need to be doing is gathering this clinical information and putting it out in a more systematic way. And this is some place where CDC can be very helpful. We now have over 1 million people in this country who've been infected with coronavirus and hundreds of thousands who've been hospitalized. We should start seeing more reporting on the collected clinical experience of those patients. That would be very helpful to providers. And I'm hopeful that that information is going to be coming out soon. We really haven't seen a lot of systematic reporting in the United States. A lot of the data we have actually comes from Europe and China right now on the collected clinical experience of patients who've had coronavirus.